more than 2 years this week since the start of the Ukraine war. Since this war started, Russian President Vladimir Putin has been in relative isolation. He's traveled to very few countries and his public appearances have been very selective. But that has changed in the last few months. From a marathon year-end call-in and press conference to a very public and high-profile interview to American TV host Tucker Carlson, Putin has been on a publicity overdrive. But the question is why? And why now? On Crux Decode, we analyze how the Russian president, who at the start of this war was seen as reclusive and insular, not preferring to leave the confines of the Kremlin and his closest advisors, has now suddenly shifted into a publicity flurry, and how this drive helps strengthen his image both at home and abroad. As the Ukraine war enters the third year, one thing can be said with some degree of certainty. That as things stand today, it seems almost impossible that Russia will lose this war. It has taken 2 years coming, and this conflict could potentially drag on for many more years to come, but it is highly unlikely that Russia will be forced out of the territory that it now controls in eastern Ukraine. So net-net, if you would look at it in classic military terms, Putin has almost won this war. He's managed to capture large parts of the Donbass in eastern Ukraine, parts which Russia did not control prior to February 2022 when this war began. What Putin will now need to do is to convert this into a buffer state of sorts and ensure that there is some degree of separation between Mother Russia and what he has termed as an ever-advancing NATO. His next objective, of course, would be to ensure the political end of Volodymyr Zelensky. That might take a little longer. But with each passing day, as Ukraine falters in its counter-offensive effort, it makes Zelensky weaker and Putin stronger. Russia has just announced that it's conquered a key eastern Ukrainian city of Avdiivka, a key part in Ukraine's defense strategy, which has fallen after 24 months. Putin will use this to press further claims westwards into heartland Ukraine. But not everything is playing to Putin's strength or making him look good. Over the weekend, there was the shocking news of the death of Russian opposition leader and longtime dissident ALEXEI Navalny. Navalny was in an isolated prison in the Arctic. The announcement simply said that Navalny had died while he was on a walk, with no further details. But that prompted an angry President Biden of the United States to call a press conference where he openly declared that Putin was the killer of Navalny. The US president did not offer any evidence to back his claim. Those accusations were later leveled by Navalny's family. But here's the rub. For Putin, while in the immediate term Navalny's death will help rally the West on a point that they've been arguing and insisting on for years now, that in Putin's Russia there is no hope for any kind of democratic revival, that there has been complete disregard for a plurality of political voices. But it also does one thing in the medium to long term, and that is it burnishes Vladimir Putin's strongman image. He needn't have had Navalny dead. Putin is just a shoo-in from another term as president. Elections are due later this year in Russia. Putin right now is politically at his strongest. He has no challengers virtually both at home in Russia or exiled abroad who can challenge him anytime soon, or for that matter in the upcoming election. That is all the more reason why there was no compelling need to kill ALEXEI Navalny. But it does reinforce Putin's take-no-prisoners approach. Putin needs to project his strongman image both at home and abroad. He was recently on a state visit to China. He's expected to go there again soon in the first half of 2024. It's one of the countries that he has visited multiple times since the start of this war. While on the next trip to China, he might even venture a visit to North Korea. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un had visited Russia after the start of the war. There was also media speculation about Pyongyang providing Moscow with weapons, particularly artillery, as the Ukraine war drags on. Putin has made very sparse trips otherwise in the last 2 years. Once he went to Turkey and once to Iran. The rest of his foreign sojourns have been confined to Russia's immediate neighborhood. But that reticence is now changing. Putin is also using his interview with Tucker Carlson and his year's end press conference to drive home a singular message: that in Russia, he is the man in charge. He has no intentions of handing over power or stepping down from active public life anytime soon. There have been multiple rumors of Putin's continued ill health. There's also been rumors about the use of body doubles. By keeping himself so much in the public eye, Putin is hoping to blunt all that negative messaging around him at the start of this war. In the interview with Tucker Carlson, Putin rambled on about Russian history, why Russia was forced to invade Ukraine so as to correct what he saw as a historical wrong. It seemed to give off an image that Putin is the dominant person in the interview and that the interviewer is either being used as a prop or is simply too meek to confront Putin and stop him from rambling. In fact, Putin, just to rub it in, after the interview even complained that he expected the host to ask him tougher questions. He was using the interview in a way to chide at, more than on one occasion, the American TV host. This was his way of showing one-upmanship with the entire West. He's also been using his recent public utterances to draw a stark comparison with what's happening on the domestic American political scene, in contrast to the man in charge in Russia. Joe Biden has been hemming and hawing at the Republicans for blocking additional funding of $60 billion for Ukraine. Donald Trump, his Republican challenger, has shown open derision for Ukraine. He's cheesed off NATO allies by saying that Russia can do whatever the hell it wants. In this background, Putin is trying to paint his strongman image as a point of contrast with these two aging American men who have displayed declining mental faculties. He's also shoring up Russia's economic image among the global community in a bid to show that the Russian economy, far from collapsing as was predicted at the start of this war, is still going strong despite 2 years of this war. Whether or not ALEXEI Navalny's death will become a rallying point in Russia, that is hardly clear at this point of time. It is unlikely that it will sway the elections, which are coming up later this year. What Putin is counting on is confusion and distraction in the West as he doubles down on the Ukraine war. Russia has recently taken Avdiivka, which is a key eastern town. It's now hoping to press further westwards in Ukraine. As the war enters its 3rd year this week, Putin is at his strongest, both politically, and the Russian army seems to be in the best position since the start of this war militarily. But can this finally turn the tide of this war? Or whether this will galvanize Western nations to rally harder behind Ukraine, that is an open question right now. Putin, the cat with 9 lives, is sure to survive this one too.